Hi, everyone. You're listening to another episode of the Case Closed podcast. I'm your host, Professor C, and I'm joined today by Vlord.
Hi, everybody.
Vlord is coming onto the show with us today. He's actually one of the few people, well, I wouldn't say few. You said it was close to 100, right? People that got to go see the premiere. I guess a few out of 100,000, according to what you're telling me. But you got to go see Detective Conan Zero the Enforcer in theaters at the Anime Expo event.
Yes, that's right. It was a very interesting experience, to say the least.
From what you've told me, it really sounds like it. And obviously, we're going to talk about that a little bit for sure. But I want to talk a little bit about you. We've talked on Twitter for a little while and kind of went back and forth. Tell the audience what it is what do you do?
So, as far as the anime and manga community goes, I am a editorial writer for all-comic.com as well as TsunamiFaithful.com. So I mainly write manga reviews, movie reviews, editorial pieces, kind of stuff like that. And over at All Comic, we also have a podcast called Manga Mavericks. So I'm on that occasionally, where we talk about the manga industry, the various manga news, and interview a lot of different guests from the English side of the industry, translators, letterers, editors. So yeah, that's kind of what I do. As far as Conan focused content, though, I don't do a lot, which is kind of weird because I'm a huge Conan fan, but my involvement in the community is kind of limited. And I've been trying to maybe get into more Conan-related stuff, but it's always kind of tough. So I'm really glad to come on to this podcast to just talk about Conan, because I really don't get that many opportunities to do so.
Well, and for us on the podcast, we haven't recorded a new episode in a while. There hasn't been much on the English side, as much to talk about. Other than, Crunchyroll still doing the subs, and then obviously the manga is being translated. But as far as broadcast English dub, anything, movies or series or anything, of course, nothing's happened in such a long time. So it's really great to have you on, and it's really great to be able to talk about this. How many years have you been doing this? How long have you been, covering mangas, animes, all that? How long have you been doing that?
Really not that long. Okay. So as far as All Comic goes, I have been with them for only 2 years, I think. And as far as TsunamiFaithful.com, I actually joined just a few months ago, actually.
Oh, cool.
So I had been casually involved with them for a while, so it kind of just became a natural thing of, hey, you've been around for a while, so we're just gonna hire you now. So yeah. But yeah, so before that I was kind of just more just on the casual side, a fan like everyone else, and I am still a fan at my core. But yeah, so I'm still very much kind of new to the whole kind of being on the more press side of the anime and manga community, which is different but also a really interesting experience.
It sounds pretty interesting, and for a lot of people that don't know, we've talked before. Obviously, the first interview we didn't quite record all the way on my bad. But you told me you went to the premiere, and basically you went as not just a fan but as press. Talk to me about how that process kind of unfolded, and how you ended up going as press. What you had to do to be able to do that, to go to the screening and be press. How did that unfold?
So as far as the screening goes, there wasn't really any divide between press or general or industry. For that, they just kind of did a whole general ticket distribution. So when they announced the 4DX screenings for the Gundam films and Conan, they had a ShowClicks ticket form that you had to go to at a specific time to quote unquote purchase the ticket. It was a free ticket, but like you just had to like reserve your ticket because like there's going to be way more demand than there is like actual supply, as we found out because the tickets sold out in like less than 30 seconds. But as far as the convention goes, like most anime conventions, Anime Expo has a press form that you fill out as an individual where you cite what website you work for or what like outlet you work for in general, what your title or role at that outlet is, and then you provide evidence of your work, whether it's podcasts, news pieces, articles, stuff like that, and then they review that, and then you're either approved or denied. So if you have a decent enough following and legitimate content, then they usually approve you. So this was my first year actually trying to do so, because I had went to Anime Expo last year, but I didn't really think I'd be able to get in as press. But after talking to a lot of people last year and more people this year about how the application process worked, I felt more comfortable applying, and sure enough, I got in. So it's definitely the start of doing a lot more of these as press.
What are some conventions that you're looking to go to in the future?
So I already have 3 other conventions I'm going to this year. So I actually just got my approval for Crunchyroll Expo, so I'm hitting that up in August. And then I will be at New York Comic Con in October, and then Anime NYC in November. So that is my con schedule for the rest of the year.
Oh, wow. Okay. And going as press, are you planning on doing some interviews and talking to some people there, in that capacity?
So for New York Comic Con, I am currently just going as a general attendee. So I'm probably not going to do too interviews there unless crew are doing as press. So if they need help with anything, I'll help with any interviews if that comes up. As far as Crunchyroll Expo goes, I know that my brother, who also works for All Comic, Lamramayasha, he has applied for a few interviews. So we'll see if we get any. They're usually pretty hard to get unless you have a foot in the door or you're a really big outlet. But if we get someone to interview, that'll be amazing. I know Ryo Horikawa, the voice of Heiji Hattori, is going to be at a Crunchyroll Expo this year, so it would be cool to be able to interview him, but considering he's a pretty high demand guest, I'm not sure if we'll get him. But yeah, and then Anime NYC, I'm also planning to go as press. There's also a lot of big guests going there, like I think recently they just announced Richiro Inagaki and Boichi, the duo that do Dr. Stone. So we're definitely going to try to do some interviews there if we can. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But we'll definitely be covering panels there at the very least and writing about the experience. So that will be definitely some content to look forward to.
Well, and with everything that's happened, I think with Conan, I think every convention is an opportunity. Maybe an announcement comes, maybe something that we didn't know about comes. So those are things that people need to stay locked in, especially as it involves Crunchyroll as well, as people that handle the subs and do the releases and everything like that. So obviously that's a huge deal. And Ryu Horikawa also voices Vegeta, so that's really cool as well.
Yeah, that too.
So that's just another little role that he does in there too.
Just really a small, tiny role.
Yeah,
this obscure role. Series called Dragon Ball.
Yeah, I mean, if you've heard of it. The interesting thing about this is, and we've talked about this before, when the announcement came down and everything came out on Facebook, um, I really thought this was a sub release. I thought that this would appear alongside the Gundam movies as a subbed release, like English subtitles, Japanese dub. Was it clear to you when you first heard about it that it was going to be a dub, or did you have to do some digging as well, or wait for TMS to tweet about that?
So when I first saw the announcement, I kind of suspected that it might be the dub because for people in the Conan fandom, they were already aware that the dub existed because it came out it came out in like the Asian countries, I think. So it existed. People had already seen it because it leaked online. So I had a feeling that that dub was going to be shown off there. But until that TMS announcement happened, I was still like maybe 50-50 on it.
Yeah.
But it was really cool that it did end up being the dub because that was amazing.
Yeah, and the fact that it looks like it was released in Asian countries, like you had said, and then it was on a Arabic streaming service, which is how I got to view the film. There was a download for that, and of course, I'm not a big fan of pirating or anything like that, but if it has to do with Conan, well, I've got to see it. It's not going to affect if I'm going to buy it or not. If it comes out, I'll buy a digital copy and a physical copy, most likely, to support it. But obviously, there are some things that would be different in in Asian countries, or an Arabic release. Like the intros, and I never got to ask you this last time we spoke, was, were those dubbed into English, or did it stay in Japanese with the little opening subtitle card? How did that go?
So are you referring to like the actual title card itself?
The opening title card, like as it's doing the intro, did they actually have that dubbed into English, or did that stay with subtitles?
I think it stayed with subtitles.
Okay.
Like I think it was just the Japanese logo then with subtitles saying Detective Conan. I'm not 100% sure on that though, because it has been a few weeks since I've seen the film at this point.
Sure, yeah, and it was something I did not think about at all the last time we spoke, and I just it just occurred to me. I'm like, I wonder if that was made into English, because when they advertised the film, they advertised it with an English title card, and I just wondered if that had made it in.
Maybe they did use an English title card then. Honestly, I don't remember what the English title card they promoted it with looks like.
Okay. But obviously this film was, aside from it appearing at Anime Expo, it was the highest grossing film period in Japan in 2018, and really, people were really excited in Japan for this film, and of course, Fist of the Blue Sapphire has followed up and done very, very well in Japan as well. Why do you think, and we'll talk more about the screening here in a little bit, but just on a side question, why do you think Conan's popularity has taken off so much, in the last few years, especially over there, and not just as a series, but really it's a huge box office attraction over there? Why do you think that is?
I've thought about this a lot, and it's hard for me to pick one singular reason for why it's kind of had this sort of resurgence of sorts. I think part of it is definitely the introduction and presence of Amuro Toru, because as we've seen with even his spin-off Zero's Tea Time, that has done extremely well. So I think his introduction to the story and his more heavy involvement in the story has definitely brought in more people who were maybe just casual Conan watchers in Japan, and just made them avid readers and watchers. I think part of it too is just Conan is kind of nearing closer to a quote unquote endgame. People who've read the manga or even watched some of the recent episodes of the anime have seen some of the bigger twists that have happened, and that's kind of gotten a lot more, I think, people excited. Like, oh, we're getting kind of some more progress here. Things are getting interesting. So I think it's stuff like that where, like, a lot of people in Japan just watch Conan kind of like you would like say The Simpsons or something. It's a family show, but because it's starting to move more towards kind of a final arc of sorts, I think that's kind of bringing people's attention the same way that like One Piece kind of did with like the Marineford arc like ages ago, except on a bit of a smaller scale because Conan is not One Piece huge, at least as far as the manga and the anime go. But I think that's probably somewhat of the reason. It's hard to really pin it down, but I think Conan is just doing so many things right now that it's just bringing people in because of all that effort that's being put in.
It's a fair point. I think too, it's the characters they're picking also to pair in these films. They're important characters that people want to see. Kaito Kid's a really popular character that you can put him in every Conan movie if you wanted to, and people are going to just go to the box office over there in droves to see it. And so, having Kaito for Fist of the Blue Sapphire was good. Amuro is a really interesting character in the sense that, we know a decent amount about him at this point if you've watched the show, but it's not like everything on him has been revealed. And, even for me, I mean, knowing kind of what side of it he's on, I still feel as if there's a lot of conflict to his character that hasn't really been resolved that I think makes him interesting in so many ways. It's just very interesting to me that every year it's like a record watch. Is it going to shatter its own record again at the box office over there? And the next film, movie 24, is going to be based on the Akai family, from everything I'm hearing. So I think that'll be very equally as interesting. What were your thoughts initially when you heard of a dub? Since we haven't seen a dub in so long, the last dub content we saw was movies movies 3 through 6 really coming out about a month and a half to 2 months apart in 2010, and then that was it. We haven't seen any dubbed Conan content here since. What are your thoughts on 9 years? And here we are with a new dub. It's really interesting. What do you think about that?
So when I first heard of even the new dub's existence, I kind of was not necessarily conflicted, but surprised that TMS was even bothering with Conan, trying to dub Conan again. But when I think about it, it makes sense because Conan is having a resurgence in Japan. It kind of just makes logical sense that they should do that second push internationally. One thing I do remember from ages ago was back when TMS was trying to bring Lupin back into relevancy over here, around the time that Part 4 was coming out. And I think that's kind of what they're trying to do with Conan now, is bring it back to a wider audience, try to rekindle that Western fandom that's kind of went underground in a way over the years. And I think for doing that, the best way to do that is getting more dub content out there. There are people who won't watch something if it's not in their native language. At the end of the day, a lot of it is a preference thing, a convenience. So having a dub expands to those audiences that aren't necessarily going to seek out a subbed series. And I think this is the best course of action for doing that, because The films are a lot safer bet. They're more self-contained than the TV series. So it's a nice way to gauge demand for the series in the US and just abroad in general.
Yeah, and I agree with that wholeheartedly, and I'm thrilled that this isn't just a U.S. Canada dub like the Funimation one was. Basically, this is worldwide. This is something that you could go to your theater in Germany and you can watch it in German, or you can watch it in English or Japanese with English subs. I think it just gives Conan to be in English, especially for the films, is just really important. I think, given how well the films do, I think it maximizes how well it can do. Not just in the U.S. but worldwide, because of the different options, and having an English choice, I think, is just great. And I do think that it being an international dub also it did impact how they ended up casting characters. Talk to me about some of the cast members. Obviously, and we've talked about Wendy Lee is Conan, Christina V is Rachel, and then Erica Harlacher is Mitch, and I believe it's Erica. Is it Hernandez? Is Hybera?
Erica Mendez.
I apologize. Erica Mendez is Hybera. And of course, I think I said Xander Mobus as Mori Kogoro, so that we know of. And then obviously Griffin is playing Shinichi Kudo. Griffin Burns.
Yeah, Griffin Burns is Shinichi Kudo, and Kyle McCarley is Todo Amuro.
Yeah, so tell me, like, watching we'll back up a little bit. I mean, getting to the event, what was that like? What was the scene outside of the theater? What was the buzz? And who did you get to talk to while you were there?
Yeah, so I guess I headed to the theater I think right maybe half an hour before the actual showing, and there wasn't really much of a crowd or anything, because it's not like most Anime Expo events where you have to line up, really, because you either have a ticket or you don't. So you're either going to just go into the theater or you're not going to. But when I got there wasn't really a good direction on what we were supposed to do. The volunteers were kind of disorganized. This is obviously the first 4DX film festival, as they're calling it. So I think they weren't really prepared on how they're supposed to structure it. So at first they directed me outside, where there were a group of people, but they didn't have wristbands. So I think so at Anime Expo have a group of attendees that are premium badge holders, and those people get priority to all events, including ticketed events, I think. So I think they were lining up to potentially get a spot if there were any open spots in the theater. After I realized that wasn't the proper line for people who had wristbands, I basically just kind of went straight into the theater and just found the actual theater room. And surprisingly, the back half of the theater was completely filled up. There was already quite a few people there, but the front half of the theater was still relatively empty. And the reason for that, though, was that a good 10 seats or so of the theater were reserved for TMS staff. So I just found a seat in that front section that wasn't reserved and just sat there. But a little bit afterwards, the TMS staff members came in. There were only about 5 of them or so, and I'm not sure who they were specifically, because I'm not super familiar with the TMS USA division. But they seemed like they were important. But afterwards, the 2 people who came in were Sandy Fox, the voice of Chibiusa in the Sailor Moon dub, and Lex Lang, the voice of Goemon in the newer Lupin dubs, as well as the ADR director for the Conan film. So I actually talked to him quickly before the film started, I introduced myself as a member of TonamiFaithful.com because we had interviewed a few of the Lupin staff members before, specifically Richard Epcar and Michelle Ruff. So I thought, hey, might as well get this networking going so maybe we could interview him in the future. Plus, I'm also a big Lupin fan, so getting to just talk to him in general is just really cool. So yeah, we talked for a bit, and he's just super nice, really down to earth, and you could really tell he cared a lot about just his work and also his work on the Conan dub. I mean, I remember one thing we were both really interested about was the 4DX experience because neither of us had seen a 4D movie before. So yeah, it was just it was really fun talking to him, and I also got to talk to Sandy a little bit too. She's also extremely nice, really, really humble, and yeah, it really set up a nice mental high for myself before the film started, which just made the film all the more enjoyable.
It sounds like it, and from everything you've told me, Lex is incredibly nice, and it was nice that he took the time. You said he sat behind you at the film?
Yeah, so like there were a few seats like I think right behind me, so like I think a few of them were reviewed for reserved for ADA or handicap seats, but there were also just a few other ones, so I think they just took those ones because that was like usually a pretty good view. But it was kind of weird though because I had like important people to the right of me and important people to the back of me, so it's just like I better not do anything dumb during this movie.
What were some, if any, and this is something I haven't asked before, but what were some of the reactions of some of the important people? Did they give anything away, or did they did they give anything away as to had they seen the film before, or were they watching it to kind of gauge what the audience's reaction was? Yeah, what's your theory on that? Being there, obviously.
I mean, I feel like the staff members that were there were probably there to gauge the audience, at least to a degree. As far as Lex and Sandy go, I think they were just there to enjoy the movie because they both worked on the movie, so I think they just really wanted to see the end product. I did find it funny, one thing Lex was saying before the film, like so before the actual film started, they were promoting the new Takashi Koike Lupin films that were getting dubbed. Goemon Spray of Blood and Fujiko's Lie. And when the Goemon promo came up, he's like, "Oh, hey, that's me." So that was kind of funny.
Oh, that's good. So it sounds like everyone was having a pretty good time with it then at the premiere.
Yeah,
that's good.
Like as far as like any like real hints about how they felt about the audiences, it was hard to tell. I think like they did take away that the audience was enjoying the film because everyone was laughing at the right moments. People were really into the film. Everyone was clapping at the end. So the crowd liked it, and most of the people who got it, I'd assume, were the hardcore of hardcore Conan fans. So like that's kind of to be expected.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, anybody being able to go that enjoys it, if it's done with care and done well, I think people, really enjoyed that. I wish I could have been there. Oh my gosh, that would have been nice. Talk to me a little bit. We talked about the film a little bit and the substance of it. What surprised you, or what stood out to you about the dub in general and how it was handled? What was the key points of that?
So I guess as far as the dub was handled, I enjoyed it for the most part. I felt like we talked about this before, but like a lot of times it felt like the script was very literal at times. Like it was clearly trying to be faithful to the Japanese script, and maybe a little bit to a fault. I guess like some of the lines of dialogue did just feel like very much like they were just literal translations of what was being said in Japanese. Like, and it didn't feel or it didn't sound bad, because the voice direction itself was great, but the delivery at times was maybe a bit awkward. Like, it didn't ruin the experience by any means, but it was very clear that this was kind of a first attempt of sorts.
Yeah, and then I will say, if it's going to be a film, at least it's in the film, and it's not in a long running series with that. I think that's important to note as well. Talk about Wendy Lee, obviously as Conan. What do you feel like she brought to the character in the film? What stood out to you about her performance, and possibly, if anything happens with the series in the future, what are your thoughts on her being Conan for the long haul if they end up deciding to do something with the series?
So Wendy Lee's performance at first, the first time I heard it, I was a bit unsure about it. But by the end of the film, I was kind of sold. Like, it's a very different interpretation of Conan for those who are used to the Funimation English dub. Like, I forget who plays Conan in the Funimation dub. Isn't it Alison Victorin?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So, like, it's very different from that voice. So from that perspective, it takes a lot of getting used to. But at the same time, it's also closer to the Japanese performance, which is probably for the best, since this is trying to go more international and trying to be more closer to the Japanese version in general. So from overall, I just kind of enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. It's really good first attempt. And I think over time, if they do dub more, I think Wendy Lee will really be able to thrive in this role.
Yeah, watching the film, we've talked about this. I felt she got better as the film went on. I mean, by about close to halfway through, I was pretty well sold on it, because I just felt like she was growing into the character, just as I think the natural progression of recording went. And I had to think back to originally, when you watch some of those early episodes of Case Closed even, some of those characters and their dialogue was really odd. Some of the things they would say, but they were also at the time building it for the Cartoon Network Adult Swim run as well. So there were some things even back in the early days of the Funimation dub where characters said things that didn't quite make sense or match up, just because they were trying to create an edgier show for a network instead of focusing on what a good, like, really solid line delivery and all that. And with this film, obviously these characters have developed with Amuro and Conan and Hybera, and I had worried at times that when you've built these characters already and then your first attempt at dubbing is coming in and doing this, there's a lot of chances to miss out on some callbacks or deliver a line in a way that implicates something from the past with that character. I thought Wendy Lee had done really, really well in delivering those lines. I think better than even some other lines that were delivered in the film. I thought she did very well with that. Talk to me about Griffin Burns, as Shinichi Kudo. Obviously, we got to hear, him in the film a decent amount, and Christina V as Rachel, which I think was a great casting decision based on hearing her. What was your thoughts on both of those?
So, Griffin Burns, I thought, did a good job as Shinichi. It's hard for me to really get a strong opinion about it, because, like, in the Japanese version of Conan, obviously, Shinichi's voice actor, Kabe Yamaguchi, doesn't actually talk that much, because all the internal monologues in the original Japanese were done by Conan's VA. And the Funimation dub had changed that the inner monologue is Shinichi. So here in this movie, since they're trying to be more faithful to the Japanese, we don't really get to see Griffin Burns talk as Shinichi that much, outside of that kind of little intro scene. But the little that we did hear of him, I enjoyed. I thought it was good.
Yeah, and really, I mean, interesting. We were talking about Erica Harlacher voicing Mitch, and then Erica voicing Hybera Mendez, right? Erica Mendez for Hybera.
Yeah, Erica Mendez is Hybra.
Both of them, I thought, did fantastic in the film, voicing those characters, and especially Hybera. Being Hybera is a tough character for me that I would think to get that voice down, because you have to have you have to be a kid, but you've also got to have that edge of I'm an adult. And Erica Mendez, I thought, did a tremendous job.
Yeah, I mean, Erica Mendez is incredibly talented. I mean, she's been like Ryuko in Kill la Kill, Gon in Hunter x Hunter, recently Emma in The Promised Neverland. I feel like she was kind of the perfect choice for Hybera, because she has the experience under her belt, and she can do these kind of versatile performances. So being able to find that middle ground between like having the voice of a child but the personality of an adult, she just nails it perfectly.
And obviously Kyle voicing Kyle, was it what's his last name?
McCarley.
Kyle McCarley, yeah, voicing Amuro. Phenomenal and a great choice, especially with the tone of his voice and the way that the lines were delivered. I thought he did a fantastic job, especially for a character that, he must not have really had a whole lot of backstory on and probably didn't know a whole lot about going in. I thought he did a really solid job delivering those lines.
Yeah, like Amuro is a tough character to do, especially because you're literally competing with Todo Furia. And Todo Furia is such a prolific seiyuu in the Japanese acting scene. So Kyle McCarley really still is able to capture that perfectly, which is so cool to see. Like he is what I imagine Amuro to sound like. And I was instantly blown away, and I'm like, yes, this is Amuro. I think the only other character that I felt like that instantly in the film was Inspector Kuroda, who was voiced by Richard Epcar, who was a freaking legend. So, of course, Epcar is going to nail Kuroda, but it's just such a perfect combination. Like, Kyle and Amuro, a dream combination.
Yes, absolutely. And I felt that way. It's the same way with Wendy Lee, is the same way I felt about Christina V. About halfway through, I'm like, I really like Christina V. as Rachel. So there were some voice, and this is the only thing that kills you about a movie and what could possibly be a one-off English dub. There's no confirmed news out there to tell us otherwise. Obviously, we hope for more, but I left watching the film feeling like, God, I would love to hear these people in a long-running series and doing it for a long period of time, because it's hard to gauge how well you like the voices when you don't hear them a whole lot. Did you leave feeling that way and wanting to see more of these characters, or what was your takeaway from that?
I mean, as someone who would love to see more dub content, I definitely wanted to see more of the characters, but I feel like I still got a good feel for how I felt about the performances of the main cast. But at the same time, I can only expect them to get better over time. So, it's a weird feeling.
Well, and especially if they go into it, I think, with a little more of a backstory on their characters, because I would really highly suspect, even going into record, I don't think that these guys had a lot of idea of who these characters really were and knew a whole lot of their backstory. Because to be fair to Lex Lang and the directors, it's a huge backstory on these characters. It's not just something you can read online and dig up. I mean, there is so much building that has gone on with these characters. I would expect the same thing in a long-running series or even more movies for them to sound different. But Lex directing the film, I think, did the best job that he possibly could with what he had, and I think you would say the same thing as well.
Yeah, I mean, when you're dealing with a series as long as Conan, it's gonna be tough, especially starting so far in. I'm sure that they did try to do as much research as possible, but yeah, like Conan's not a thing that you can just like easily go onto like the Detective Conan World Wiki or something and like figure out everything in a short time span. But given the constraints they had, likely I think they did probably the best job that they could, and that's all I could really ask for.
Yeah, so talk about the 4DX effect. I mean, obviously, seeing it dubbed for the first time, or a Conan dub for the first time in a long time, had to be cool enough. What was that 4DX experience like? What was different than just going to your standard theater and seeing another film?
So the funny thing about the 4DX effect is that the day before the screening, I was joking with a friend about how Conan is probably the last movie that needs 4DX effects, because it's usually like Conan just talking like the entire time. But somehow it works really well in this film. So they basically added all these chair movement effects whenever Conan was like running or on his skateboard, or there was like a car sequence. So there's like one part in the film where like Amuro and Conan are in Amuro's car, and they're driving Amuro's car out of a freaking tower to hit like I think it's like some sort of stray like satellite that's like falling down. So like during that scene, your chair would just like rapidly shake and like move like crazy, and it like further immerses you into the experience. And like overall, like you think that this stuff would all be distracting and like take away from the movie, but it's the opposite. It just makes the movie better, because you kind of are feeling the same like senses that the characters are feeling, and it just really makes it just that much more of an engaging piece of entertainment. So it was really cool, and I kind of hope I can go to like more of these types of screenings maybe next year when AX does more.
You think they're flirting with the idea of maybe, hopefully, cross your fingers, thinking of licensing Fist of the Blue Sapphire and maybe bringing it to Anime Expo next year?
I wouldn't be surprised if we see TMS dub it for next year's Anime Expo, whether it's just a regular screening or a part of this group of 4DX films that Anime Expo is trying to do.
Do you think Conan? Well, I mean, obviously, and we talked about this before. Some of the rumor mill stuff going out online. Obviously, we were talking about Shroom a little bit, putting out some of that stuff. And some of the sources are not very reliable. And kind of in the sense of wanting to be careful. I don't want to start any rumors here, and so I'm gonna, I'll tiptoe around stuff. Obviously, if it doesn't come from TMS or Bang Zoom, I don't look at it as a whole lot of news. I mean, there's some things that that are known to me that are really cool about the show and everything that's going on right now. But unless it comes from TMS or Bang Zoom, I want to highlight to everybody, be very careful about what that source is, where it comes from, and who it is. Unless it comes from those guys, I think getting something official is really important, and especially since we've been hoodwinked, I think, in the U.S. with Conan before, and had a lot of the same struggles. With the film even being shown as a 4DX event, really the promotion on it wasn't all that. Well, I wouldn't say it was really all there, And so we've had some of those issues with Conan in the past as far as advertising and kind of the word of mouth thing. It's really the biggest reason, one of the biggest reasons why it's important that we talk about it. Obviously, you and I here, to kind of put the word out that an English dub is back, but we don't know what the full extent of it is because we haven't heard on that. So, was there anything else said at Anime Expo regarding Conan or the film in general, and really just trying to focus on this one piece of English dub property? Was anything else said at the convention by anybody?
No one, as far as I know. Like, TMS didn't have any panels dedicated. Lex Lang didn't say anything about it. And no one really talked to any of the TMS staff during the Conan screening. So, as far as like the quote unquote leaks go about future Conan content, most of it is pretty unlikely to actually be true, because I doubt anyone did it anytime else during the convention. Because for one thing, actually interacting with these Japanese guests is not that easy. Like, even if you're press, you can't just walk up to these people. That's not how it works. So just take that as you will. Like, be cautious about what you see online, because more than likely it's not true.
Yeah, and obviously, being on Twitter, you probably see a whole lot of lots of things that you've got to go dig into and find out if they're factual or they are just kind of pulled out of thin air. And I think with Conan, it's that way too. I think people are so passionate and want it so bad that people will say what could be logical or could make sense and try to promote that as a real story. And I think as an audience, we've got to be very careful with those things as a group, so that we don't mislead people or get people's hopes up. I can remember years ago, Conan was at an interesting standstill, because there were no more episodes being dubbed into English, but there was the Detective Conan translation project, which I'm sure you've heard of before. That was subbing the episodes and putting content out there for fans, and really promoting it that way. And this whole time there were rumors, going on that, Funimation's going to do more, or, will Funimation do more, and are they going to, when is it going to come out, and all that. Do you think that the rumor mill is going to be much more this time around after this premiere, or do you think it'll kind of die down a little bit till we possibly see a Blu-ray announcement?
I think it's going to be less than last time, simply because the Conan fandom has matured and, let's face it, probably dwindled compared to those times. So I'm not expecting there to be a huge rumor mill, but there's obviously still going to be rumors. People love to gossip. But I feel like until we get more hints at a future Conan release, even a Conan home video release, I think the rumor mill should hopefully not get too out of hand.
Yeah, I would hope so as well. I mean, if it's not official, I know you won't report on it. I won't report on it, obviously, unless it's from a really credible source that, it's safe to bring out to the world and to fans that obviously care and want to know. What were your takeaways from the film, other than getting to see a new English cast? What are some things you were thinking, sitting there watching the film with everybody in the audience?
I mean, I guess the first thing that came to mind is I need cast. At the end of the day, differences and all, I really like the dub cast for this film, and I thought, hey, if we're going to have more dub content with Conan, let's go with this cast, dub the next movie, maybe dub the TV series, just go for it. But, I don't know, it's hard for me to really think of anything at the time. I mean, I guess as far as the film goes, it's a pretty decent Conan film. I was rewatching Crimson Love Letter, I think a few days beforehand. So I was kind of comparing it in my head to that. And I don't like it as much as Crimson Love Letter, but it's still a fun Conan flick. And yeah, it was just a really enjoyable time.
Yeah, and I think my takeaway from it is, this is, I think, an amazing thing for not just fans in the U.S., but I think fans worldwide that could get a chance to see, Conan in English for the first time. That, I mean, knows probably nothing about the Funimation dub and all that. But I think there's also an interesting history with the Conan dub in general, in the sense, Funimation licensed that in 2003, started putting out episodes in 2004. 88 episodes were released on these little DVDs, and then for about 2 years nothing came out, and then they ended up doing seasons 4 and 5. You do the rest of the films that you have under your contract, and you release movies 1 through 6. You already have 4 and 5 out. You do nothing for 4 years, then you get the streaming rights, hold those for 4 years, and then lose it without putting anything out for a long time, but yet a company still held the license when it came down to it for 15 years. And then it went away, and now here comes Bang Zoom to do a film. I just think that the dub for it it's almost very much like what happened with Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z in a lot of ways with some of those early dubs, which, ironically enough, Wendy Lee is the very first voice of Bulma in that 1989 Harmony Gold dub of Dragon Ball. So it's very interesting, the story of the English dub for the series, and kind of how it's kind of come full circle with this film.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I feel part of Funimation having that license so long is just probably from whatever contract they had with KMS. Because some of these contracts, especially for bigger anime licenses, are pretty long. Like, you can have 10-year long contracts for a show. Like, that's not out of the realm of possibility. But yeah, I mean, I think definitely Funimation losing the license definitely opened the door for more Conan content getting dubbed and licensed. Like, we had the Lupin versus Conan films that were licensed by Discotech a few years back, but even those, I think, are technically under the Lupin label, basically, so that's kind of justifiable license, while with Conan primarily being under Funimation at the time, most other licensors aren't going to really touch Conan because of that. So I think now with Detective Conan kind of being in like a unlicensed abyss of sorts, it creates more possibilities, especially because it's such a big franchise and there still is a fandom that's willing to buy it. Like, that does make companies like TMS think, hey, if American licensor doesn't want to do this, how about we do that ourselves?
Yeah, and TMS, of America, obviously, doing Lupin, doing some other things. I think it really does open the door for the series, and especially, them basically, you'd say, commissioning Bang Zoom to create a dub, and Bang Zoom having so many actors and people they can, ask to or reach into to go ahead and not just do a film like they did here, but they have enough people that can record a long-standing series, and you can bring in multiple voices for suspects and all that, and it not sound repetitive. And that was the only thing about the Funimation dub, is you could kind of tell every few episodes they're bringing in the same people, kind of over and over for some of the suspects. And I think that's one thing I'd be really interested to see, is how would the company handle a long-running series if it does come to that point. What would the writing be like? What would the deliveries be like? How would these characters develop? Those are the questions I would have, just because I think that, a good amount of them did a fantastic job in the film. And so seeing them in a long-running series with direction, more backstory, I think it would be a win-win for all the fans here.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I mean, as far as dubbing goes, I mean, the dubbing scene has dramatically changed since when Detective Conan was first dubbed as Case Closed. So, like, just the possibilities that can happen with voice actor variety and stuff like that now is a lot bigger. Like, obviously, there is like the LA acting pool is huge. There is, of course, the union non-union type divide with the VA pool, but even then, there's just so many actors that they can pull from for suspects, for additional characters. It really fits a series like Conan that has such a large cast to be able to pull from this large variety of actors rather than being limited to just a select few.
Yeah, and the cast members that are in place, all we can hope is that those characters are not looking to be recast in any way. Obviously, you want the cast that you've seen on screen already in movie 22 to carry that, because at that point, if you're recasting, it's like starting at ground zero again. And I think if it not only it's back as a series, but if it's called Detective Conan, it might be a better situation for it in general, because it really is, you don't have to worry about going back and using the English names. Or if you called it Case Closed, I think you'd have to at least think about that because of what Case Closed means to fans that have already seen it.
Yeah, I'd say so. And I feel like if they are going to do more stuff, they're going to keep calling it Detective Conan. Like, even this film was never promoted as Case Closed. It was just all Detective Conan. So I think that's what they want to go with moving forward, because they're trying to hit that international audience rather than just that like US niche.
Yeah, I could see that, but then it raises the question: would the manga name change over here to Detective Conan as well if they were promoting that it was doing well, or is there a
Kind of
license?
doubt it.
That's the only question I'd have.
Yeah, I mean, Viz generally tries to stay consistent with their manga releases. So, like, even now, even though they don't do name changes anymore for Case Closed, they still keep those old Funimation names for the characters that were around during the Funimation dub. So, like, obviously, like, Shuichi Akai in the Viz release, but Ran Mori is Rachel Moore and stuff like that. So I don't think that will magically change if Detective Conan comes over here proper, just under that title with the original names intact. It would be cool if it did change it, but I think that's just here to stay at this point.
I've theorized that this film getting an English release, it's almost like it did because not only did fans want want the series back in English in some form and everything like that, but to me it's like this film did so well in Japan. How can it not have an English version of it? Or have an English version available? Do you get the sense in that with this film?
Yeah, I definitely do. I feel like part of the reason it was brought over in the first place is because it's such a big deal in Japan and because it did so well. And even when we think about it, like, Conan has gotten a lot of buzz in the past year. Like, there was that whole like Conan O'Brien thing, going to Japan to Conan Town. That got like a lot of publicity. And it's just stuff like that. Like, it's the perfect time to try to bring Conan back over here. So TMS is clearly just jumping on it.
Yeah, I remember those skits very, very well, and it does seem like that may play a part in it too, just because, in general, I mean, obviously Conan O'Brien's a huge figure, and that segment, itself, I mean, was trending at one point. So people, worldwide, not just here, but people worldwide got to see that. So, if it does come back, obviously we do have Conan O'Brien to partially thank for that as well.
Conan O'Brien saved Detective Conan.
He may play a part in that. It was really cool, by the way. And to see some of those segments of him in Conan Town and doing some of those things. That was actually pretty funny. I didn't even know they had a Conan Town until this all even happened. Now I want to go to Conan Town.
Yeah, I know, right? It looks so cool.
Eat at some of the little eateries and coffee shops. So that'd be really nice. But I'm really, I mean, seriously, the fact that you've taken the time, the fact that we've gotten to sit down and talk about this, well, not once now, but twice. I'm so glad that you took the time out for this. Where are some places people can reach you? Where can you be reached on social media?
Yeah, people can find me on Twitter at VLordGTZ. And then otherwise, you can find my Tanami.com, and then my more manga-focused reviews and content over on allcomic.com. And yeah, so if you see me anywhere on those things, just feel free to say hi. If you are at any of the conventions I'm going to, Crunchyroll Expo, New York Comic Con, or Anime NYC, say hi at those. I always love seeing just people from online in person. It's always a really nice feeling. So yeah, just hit me up on any of those.
And one of them was ToonamiFaithful.com, right?
Yes.
Okay, it cut out there for a minute. I just wanted to make sure. Okay. Well, wonderful. Well, that's really great. Well, Vlord, I really appreciate you taking the time out to talk to me again about this. The movie, obviously, we're waiting on a Blu-ray announcement, or possibly who knows what else could be announced regarding the film. But obviously, a Blu-ray announcement would be welcomed. Obviously. That's something that we'll cover when that happens. But in our final thoughts, what would you like to see with the series going forward?
So I guess movie 23 getting dubbed. That's the biggest thing on my list. And then after that, I guess anything from the Conan TV series dubbed. Like, I don't care where they start. I don't care what they skip. Just dub something from the TV series.
Well, and as Akai being my favorite character, if they do that, they better get that voice right. That's all I have to say.
That'll be a very important detail.
The voice alone will determine on if I'm throwing riots on outside of the Bang Zoom studios. But no, I'm sure they'll do a great job with it. I'm just teasing. Kai, of course, everybody knows is my favorite character in the series. But I feel the same way. Any content is welcome, and obviously, I think that the future is bright for us here in the States regarding Conan, no matter what ends up happening with it. But I really appreciate you taking the time out, and I hopefully we can get together again and chat about this sometime soon. Hopefully.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. This was a really fun talk. I enjoyed.
Man, I'm glad you did, and we're so happy to have you, man. Thank you for coming on today with us.
Yeah, thanks.
And everyone, remember you can find us on Facebook at Save Case Closed, Twitter at Save Case Closed. We're doing a little bit more work on Twitter, and we will also be debuting our Instagram page very, very soon. So just stay tuned for that. And thank you guys for listening to the Case Closed podcast. Take care, everybody.